I have been probably seen more Russian officials than the Trump campaign, so from this point of view, I can do it. But basically what I'll do is the following. Let's try to start with something different. There is a very famous psychology experiment. In a very quick succession, you're showing to a person drawing of cats, and you're asking him every 10 seconds, what does he see? And he sees cats. And then you start to mix the cats with dogs, and you're asking him, what does he see? And he continues to claim that he sees cats. And then somebody is shouting his name, so there is a distraction. When he's back to the picture, he starts seeing dogs. And I do believe that what happened with the international order is that there was a certain change in the constellation of power before. There was the rise of China. There was a different type of Russian positioning. But what happened, basically starting with financial crisis, going through annexation of Crimea, and now with the elections of Donald Trump and the changes in the American policy, is that we started seeing also the dogs. And I'm saying this because this type of a change of the way people all over the world is seeing what is happening, I do believe is one of the major factors. For the Europeans, and this is from there I'll move to Russians, three major assumptions on which European security vision was built was dramatically challenged. One is that economic interdependence basically is reducing the risk of war. And this was the most important thing, but historians are always telling us that this is true when the partner has a positive trade expectations. When the partner has a negative trade expectations, the economic interdependency increases the risk of war. And from this point of view, Europeans were very convinced that while military power is a factor outside of Europe, it was not perceived as a factor in Europe. Crimea put an end to this. And to be honest, when now we talk about military budgets and so on, this is a good exercise, but at the end of the day, the trigger matters. And from this point of view, having a potential, military potential, is not the same as being able to use them. And European Union is in a much more kind of a difficult position from this point of view. The second thing that I do believe happened is that Cold War reference is not here anymore. We are not living in a post-Cold War world. This is not how people are seeing it anymore. I was in Turkey recently, and the Turkish minister told me the following. He said, Ivan, World War II is over, and Cold War is over, but World War I has not finished yet. And I do believe from this point of view, basically the period of disintegration of the continental empires, the Habsburgs, the Ottomans, the Russian, is becoming much more reference point for the way many people are seeing what is going on. And then I'll go to Russia. Basically, in the beginning of the century, Americans believed that they have two jobs to do in order to keep the international order, to manage the decline of Russia and the rise of China. And also, there was a very strong assumption shared by many people that Russia and China cannot go too close together. This is not true anymore. One of the unintended consequences of the Ukrainian crisis, and basically one of the unintended consequences of the sanctions regime, is that we are seeing a strategic cooperation between Russia and China, and keeping in mind that if their leaders are going to stay there for the next decade, I do believe this strategic axis is going to be real. From the Russian perspective, and this is in order to end this, Russians are viewing this very much on the model of the French-German cooperation. They said France was much weaker in economic terms than Germany, but France has a different military culture, different strategic culture. It's much more ready to take risks. So this is going to be also, in a certain way, the rationale of the Russian-Chinese relations. China is a much bigger economic power, much bigger potential. This is an asymmetrical relationship, but President Putin basically shows that he is much easier to go to different parts of the world than the Chinese. How long this type of a logic is going to play is, for me, a very open question. But in order to end this is that Russia is also betting on something which is critically important. They don't believe that they can go with institutional and social changes. By the way, the Russian leadership are much more aware of the weakness of their system than we basically believe. So they're very much betting on technology. And they said the fact that we don't have our Apples, we don't have Alibaba and so on, can turn to be an advantage when it comes to the next round of technological innovations. And this is very much based on the military-industrial complex. So from this point of view, I do believe what you can expect from the Russian side is, and let's end with one sentence. China, meanwhile, has become an European power. And when now everybody is competing who wants to split China, if there was a forum which was basically splitting Europe, not China, but Europe, and nobody managed to prevent, it was 16+1. Everybody's talking about what Russians are doing, what the Americans are doing. 16+1 turned to be a forum in which Europe was split, and basically neither Germany nor anybody else managed to prevent it.